The Jaipur BookMark reflects the core values of the publishing industry, and it brings together some of the greatest publishing professionals from around the world.
जयपुर बुकमार्क एक ऐसा प्लेटफॉर्म है जहाँ पे कि बिजनेस को समझने का एक अपॉर्चुनिटी मिलता है. सो आई थिंक JBM इज़ समथिंग विच इज़ फैंटास्टिक एंड पीपल हु डोंट नो अबाउट इट, उनको आना चाहिए, उनको इसका हिस्सा बनना चाहिए.
Jaipur BookMark. Come and celebrate literature, meet authors, agents, publishers. Join us at the Jaipur BookMark.
On behalf of Jaipur BookMark Festival Advisors, Aditi Maheshwari Goyal, Namita Gokhale, Naveen Kishore, Neeta Gupta, and Urvashi Batalia, festival producer Sanjoy K. Roy, and all my colleagues at Team Vakats, we welcome you to the 8th edition of the Jaipur BookMark. The Indian publishing industry has grown rapidly with the world's attention converging on it. Creating a meaningful B2B platform for publishers was thus essential, and the Jaipur BookMark was conceived to run parallel to the Jaipur Literature Festival. In the 7 years since its inception, JBM has fast emerged as a nerve center for the South Asian publishing industry and is indeed a focal point where books mean business. In 2020, the world grappled with the pandemic and businesses learned to reinvent themselves and to adapt to an entirely new digital idiom. JBM 2021 is being held as a virtual event and, as always, continues to bring together all stakeholders of the business of books over meaningful discussions and far-reaching resolutions. A warm welcome to all of you to this session at the virtual JBM 2021. Indian Publishing Goes Digital. On-ground challenges and learnings. Arunava Sinha, Esha Chatterjee, Giriraj Kiradu, Kanan Sundaram, Priya Kapoor, and Ravi DC in conversation with Aditi Maheshwari Goyal. Indian language publishing's forays into digital idiom face infrastructure constraints, tech challenges, and bandwidth issues. Yet content is finding multifaceted dimensions and new avenues for sale across a vast and multilingual market. How sustainable are these online avatars? What are the revenue models? Publishing pundits from across India come together to discuss the challenges and the innovative responses that have found shape in the course of a disruptive and transitional year. Arunava Sinha translates classic, modern, and contemporary Bengali fiction and non-fiction from Bangladesh and India into English. Over 50 of his translations have been published so far. His recent translations include Kunal Basu's The Endgame, Bani Basu's Moom, Taslima Nasreen's Shameless, Desire for Fire, Modern Bengali Poetry in Translation, and the forthcoming Akhtar Ruzman Elias's Khwabnama. Esha Chatterjee runs the publishing house B Books that publishes everything from translations, fiction, non-fiction, and essays to graphic novels and corporate coffee table books. She is also the managing director of Patra Bharati, the third largest Bengali publishing house, and heads its marketing wing. Patra Bharati and B Books boast of a catalog of 2,500 plus titles, including international bestsellers, award-winning books, and those that have been made into successful films. B Books has also produced and structured international exchange programs with art councils across the world. Isha is also a book reviewer and critique. Giriraj Kiradu has been a teacher, writer, publisher, editor, and grassroots professional for 20 years. Presently, he works with Storytel India as a publishing manager for Hindi, Kannada, and Telugu. A co-editor of 5 anthologies of poetry, he is the co-founder and editor of the multilingual online magazine Pratilipi. He was also a founding member and creative director of India Habitat Center's Indian Languages Festival Samanway and founder curator of the important Hindi poetry event Kavita Samay. S.R. Sundaram, also known as Kanan Sundaram, is the managing director and publisher of Kala Chuvadu Publication Private Limited. He is also the editor of the publication's eponymous magazine, a monthly journal for culture and politics, and writes for national publications and websites. He has been part of the International Visitor Program to US, the Frankfurt Book Fair Fellowship Program, the Visiting International Publisher Program in Sydney in 2017, and the Istanbul Fellowship in 2020. He has published 6 Tamil books consisting of critical articles on Tamil media, publishing, and politics. Kala Chuvadu was awarded the Best Publisher Award by Publishing Next and the Romain Roland Award for the Best Translation from French to an Indian language in 2008. Priya Kapoor is editorial director, Roli Books, where she oversees the publishing list and the day-to-day functioning of the company. She has commissioned and edited best-selling books such as Dongri to Dubai by Hussain Zaidi, Taj Mahal Foxtrot by Naresh Fernandez, Black Warrant by Sunil Gupta and Sunitra Chaudhary, and The RTI Story by Aruna Roy. Ravi DC is the publisher and managing editor of DC Books, one of the top 5 literary publishing houses in India and the leading publisher in Malayalam. He's also the managing director of Current Books India Private Limited, one of the largest bookshop chains in India. He is the secretary of DC Kiza Khemuri Foundation, a trust that promotes culture and education. He is the chief facilitator of the DC School of Management and Technology and the chief facilitator of the Kerala Literature Festival. Aditi Maheshwari Goyal heads the Department of Copyrights and Translations at Vani Prakashan and is the managing trustee at Vani Foundation. She is the festival director of Hindi Mahotsav and secretariat manager of Vani Foundation Distinguished Translator Award. Aditi, over to you.
In this most wonderful session where exactly entire Indian language fraternity is together, we are discussing COVID, we are discussing pandemic, and we are discussing books in this entire scenario. We are discussing how the publishing industries of India have coped up with the pandemic and what is it that we are looking out for when we are just about few days away from 1 year of being into a scenario, a situation that no one has any clue about. No one had any clue about. But to begin with, I would go to Mr. Ravi DC from DC Books, Kerala, who's one of the biggest independent publishing houses in India. And I'd like to ask him his first reaction about 23rd March, when the lockdown was announced. What was your first reaction as to how are you going to look at the publishing, books, sales, etc.?
No, I mean, thanks, Aditi. I mean, we are quite scared, actually. I mean, I didn't know what to do. I mean, like on the 23rd, we thought this was going to end because we had pandemic, the first COVID-19 case in January, actually, and we thought it will probably end by mid-March or by end of March. You know? So all of a sudden, lockdown was rather shock, and but we were quick in action by mid-February, actually, with the online stores, thinking that people may not come to the stores. You know, so we were promoting our online. So we have an ebook ecosystem, and good thing we had almost all the new titles also in there, and all the back titles. So we on the 23rd or 25th, I forgot the day. Actually, we had the people download we were giving about 1 lakh books free actually to the customers. So we sort of initiated an action for the people to download our app and get whatever books they want it free actually. So we had 65,000 subscribers actually downloading the app and about 1 lakh of books being downloaded free by them. So that sort of triggered a new thing that, I mean, probably during the pandemic, this could be a way to survive at least for a few months, if it's only for a few weeks or months. So that did help actually. And audio again was another good thing happened actually. I mean, we sort of set up actually about 4 studios internally for our audiobooks, both with Storytel and otherwise. And that became pretty active. I mean, we again gave out at least about 5 to 10,000 audiobook subscriptions free actually with the help of Storytel. So these two kept the momentum high in terms of people not moving away from the books actually. But did it bring revenue? I think not enough actually. I mean, because our sales were like, I mean, I don't have any inhibition to say this. Actually, my April sales was 5 or 8 lakhs actually, because we didn't know what to do. I mean, whole thing was shut. And I mean, other than we had a decent sale from the online, the physical, and May actually it sort of it actually increased to rather 4 or 5 times that. That's about it. I mean, so we are really worried actually. But then we had all these strategies work from April actually, when the government allowed us to open the bookshop twice a week actually. So that sort of triggered a lot of people to come to the stores actually, though they were scared to move out. So these are the kind of things we did, I mean, during that time.
Right. We will come to the innovations that the first uplifting of lockdown brought you towards. But before we go there, I'll go to Priya Kapoor from Rolly Books, who's with us. Your first reaction to the lockdown, Priya, on 23rd March?
It was, I mean, unprecedented is the word that we've all been using, but it was very difficult to overnight think about all the protocols. And it was also, just making sure we have a lot of colleagues who live by themselves in Delhi, so also what would happen to them. And, we set up like a point person that if you have a problem, then you call so and so. So first it was sort of dealing with HR issues. And then, of course, if you need to take papers home or computers and so on. So trying to sort all of that out, because at that time we didn't really know, like how long is it going to last and how much movement are we allowed and so on. One of the good things that we did do right in the beginning was that we asked whoever didn't stay in Delhi that if you want to go home, you can. And I'm really glad in hindsight that we did, because soon flights and trains and so on also started shutting down. But what we did do almost immediately, I mean, I have on my diary the date which says 25th of March, so just literally, or 24th of March, was that we went into action about what we can do. And that was basically going as, doing a lot of programming online. We did have some of our ebooks that were available, but what could we do more to start converting and putting them up? We launched something called Rolly Pulse, which was basically our digital initiative. And knowing that all publishing activities would be halted for the foreseeable future, we focused our entire attention and resources and energy in putting together this program every week. And we did that for almost 6 months. And that brought a lot of discipline. It brought a lot of focus. And it also, I think it kept the morale of the team up as well. It gave us something to do. We were still commissioning, ideating, putting it together, learning new skills. Secondly, it kept the brand alive in the period, where we couldn't be, selling books. I mean, who would think that for 3 months there would be zero revenue coming in? So at such points, it is very easy to get discouraged, but, this really kept us going. And the third was that, when you're a company of a certain size, you don't always have the luxury to sit back and say, these are all the wonderful plans I have, and now I'm going to implement them, because there's just so much on a day-to-day basis that needs to get done. So this really allowed us to put together this digital programming and, this platform, and also make certain plans, gave us a good platform that we hope to build on from here. But yeah, I mean, it was a very unusually on the one hand, you're trying to be optimistic about for your team, but internally you also know how dire the situation was.
Right. Totally get that. We have Kanan Sundaram with us, who's one of the pioneers of Tamil publishing and has been on the organizing committee of India's, I would, in my knowledge, would know, as the first online book fair that was organized in Tamil Nadu. Kananji, your first reactions for 23rd March. And the second point I'd like to know is how the whole experience of organizing an online book fair was, and did the readers show interest, and was it uplifting for publishers in any way?
So I'll be talking about the book fair first. I think in a recent article I read on the Economist or somewhere, they said that US cannot catch up with China because when you want to form a company, it takes 17 days in China, but 23 days in the US. Okay, so when we decided to do an online book fair, we had to start a limited liability partnership, and that took us 7 to 8 months.
Right.
So unfortunately, we have not organized the book fair so far.
Okay, you haven't.
Because only 2 weeks back the formalities got over, and we have just got into the planning.
Okay.
So it's 17 days and 23 days and 9 months.
So then National Book Trust book fair would be the first then.
Possibly.
Yeah.
So because we I don't know exactly what dates they are planning, because we have a separate team looking at that. Probably in a day or two, I'll come to know the dates we are planning. Meanwhile, Chennai physical book fair has been announced with some restrictions. It's going to start on February 24th. Usually it's in January. This year they have moved to February, but it's happening. The government has allowed it with some restrictions on number of people and all that.
Right.
Safety measures. Okay, so when this thing started getting serious, I had gone to Istanbul Fellowship Program in the first week of March, and then I had an invitation to go to Paris Book Fair, and in between I planned to go to the London Book Fair. Everything was arranged, but as I was in Istanbul, things are getting serious every day. London Book Fair got cancelled, so Paris Book Fair got cancelled, and then I straight away canceled all my tickets, and from Istanbul I came home. So by the time I came back, I knew that stuff was very serious, and India is definitely going to go into a lockdown. The only question was when it's going to happen. So that it is going to happen was what was given by the first week of March, when all this was happening across the world. So when I came back, and I was quarantined in Nagarkoil, but fortunately my office and house, they are in the same complex, so I had access to my office. And we had two questions when the lockdown came. One was that my Chennai office got completely closed down because the people who were working there, they were from outstation and they had to rush back home, so office got closed. And we had to work only out of our Nagarkoil head office, where I live, from where I'm speaking now. So we had two concerns immediately. One is that we run a monthly magazine, and what am I going to do about the magazine? The printing was out of question. So we had to publish the online issue on March 1st. How are we going to do that when everything is no mobility is allowed? So using using some exceptions that the government gave for media, I myself wrote a letter to some of my staff in a letter pad for them to come to office saying this is a media house and we need to work here. So that worked. So 4 or 5 people kept coming to answer the author queries, to upload the magazine. So on April 1st, we uploaded the magazine as usual online. And then when everybody was going to get stuck at home, how are we going to continue our work? So that means that I had to organize some quick laptops, give it to many of my staff and ask them to go and stay at home, get them connected, or do it afterwards, and then so make sure that we keep in touch and the work goes on. Those are the two immediate concerns. And during this lockdown period, how we reacted was that there are things we needed to do. Our online presence was quite weak, and those things we knew that we did do them, but we didn't find the time to do them. So I took this opportunity of this, during this period to do all the things that have been kept pending for years, but we didn't find the time to do that. And now that There is no more regular work, no more regular publishing work happening, no more regular marketing. We use this opportunity, we turned it into an opportunity, and really I started working on a website and ebooks, audiobooks, and so many other things which for which I didn't have time normally. But then I had a lot of time now, and I focused on all those things, and they did bring revenue. That's the only revenue we got during the period. The sales was nearly zero, and so we that's how we survived during the lockdown period. We continued to pay salaries to all the staff, whether they came to office or not. And so all that money came in only through the other avenues of sales, physical book sales.
Okay. So a dormant digital program that was just waiting for its moment got your attention, and it just...
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Okay, very well said. I'll go to Bangla Publishing. Isha is here with us, CEO of B Books and related to the Patra Bharti, which is one of the most oldest, hugest Bangla publishing outfits. Isha, I know that there's been a lot of, I mean, Kolkata Book Fair dates are just these days, and each year we run to Kolkata for the book fair, but this year is so different. Your first reactions towards the lockdown and the life after that?
So I'll just talk about the challenges that we face. I'm not going to talk about what the innovations that we came about, maybe that later. So during this time last year, the book fair was on. It just got over. We had a great book fair. We, we did our appraisals. We gave out all the dues and everything. And then in March, we got the news of, actually it was in January that we got the news of COVID in Kerala. And then in March, we realized that COVID is actually spreading across India. We were in the Darjeeling book fair at that point of time when the first case of COVID started in Kolkata, and there was a lockdown in Darjeeling, and we had to come down in a day's time to Kolkata. And there was not too much time to react, actually. I mean, we just closed down the book fair. The Kalimpong book fair was immediately cancelled, and it was a lockdown. And I mean, when the lockdown started is when we started reacting. There was no real time that we got to kind of prepare for the lockdown for us, for our company. So it was immediate closure, and then we started preparing. So the first few reactions, it was actually a gradual reaction. The first was of shock and fear, and the fact that, I mean, if there's a lack of physical interaction, it can be book fair, it can be people going to the bookstore, it can be the books and the readers, the prospective readers. How would they actually get to see the book, the front list, everything? Then we started realizing that there's this problem of visibility, because internet is limited as a space, I mean, we are manufacturers, publishers, printers. The distributors are also fighting for the same space. The booksellers, the bookstore owners are also fighting for the same space. Our franchisees are also fighting for the same space online. It's either social media or e-commerce. Like, you don't really have much space to kind of promote your books or the new titles. I mean, diversify your promotions. And the third thing that we realized was, as time passed, that there was a huge technical challenge. That could be internet support. That could be people not understanding how to, operate on a phone or a laptop, how to pay, how to even order. I mean, these were primarily the challenges. And the fourth challenge was that how do we deal with human resource? It kind of seemed at one point that we were excess. And of course, how do we deal with our finances? Basically, I'd put it in these four heads. It was a gradual, but yes, these are the four bottlenecks that we realized it was for the time the lockdown was valid. Yeah.
So we've been into the traditional formats of publishing, where we go to the press, we get the printer, we get the distributor, we get the warehousing. And here we have Giriraj Kiraru from Storytel, the audio publisher, the audiobook publisher. And I'm sure, Girirajji, the story is entirely different from your end of the world. And we've seen that how digital took the forefront. Till now, in all the traditional publishing houses or all the traditional programs, digital has been a very dominant project that needs to be seen when the time is spare. But in the pandemic, it was the only thing to be done, and it got its due attention, it got its moment. How has things changed for you in the audiobook format? How has the industry changed? Are you looking at these changes to be a little stable in the future?
So, because we are a company which is present in 20 country markets, we started having some news about COVID much earlier. Like early part of January, we knew about it, and we kind of were thinking it is coming, it is coming, it is coming. I think one of my last physical event was JLF.
Right.
I went to JLF,
I
and
think
then
most of us,
after that, I had
most of us, yeah.
a meeting in Mumbai, and that's it.
Right.
I had to cancel everything towards mid of February. So next 2 months, all the travel was cancelled and all. But for us, it was not much of a change because as a company, we are very kind of dispersed. So even the India team is kind of working from so many places, and we would be in Mumbai once a month, once a quarter. That is the kind of frequency we have of people coming together at one place.
Okay.
So, I work from NCR. There are people working from Kolkata, people working from Chennai and Bengaluru and everywhere. So, for us, it was not much of a change in terms of how we would work. And we don't do production of that kind, but we do production in terms of recordings. And that actually took a kind of beating to begin with, because people had no idea how to record. Studios were shutting down very quickly, and we started figuring out how to do it. And then, we had to work with voice artists most of the time. We had to, help them with home setups. And if you look at the number of books that we have done during the COVID period, especially the Q2 and Q3, that is some crazy amount of production that we have done. And soon we had close to 100 home setups where people were recording books at home.
Okay.
And we were not just working in Hindi or English. Ravi has already talked about
You've said that
how we were working.
Yeah.
COVID period. And similarly, in all other languages, the production was on. Hindi, Marathi, Tamil, Bangla. So for us, that was not much of a change in terms of how we work, except the recording part. Well, because people were at home, we did see a kind of sharp increase in our intake. And a lot more people tried audiobooks for the first time between April and June.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of people actually. Some of them have left, some of them have stayed, but it has taken us to an entirely new level basically.
Right.
So for us, the main challenges were at home. The challenges were more psychological. The challenges were more about production, how to do more and more audiobooks at home, and how to keep the same kind of technical specifications and quality and all. Those were our challenges. But our challenges were entirely different from the kind of challenges the print publishers had.
Like?
We did not face the delivery problem, distribution problem.
Right.
Because it was anyway digital. Yeah. So there was no issue of not a book being delivered to somebody's place for 2 months.
Right.
And that's
I think Raj froze. It's okay. We'll edit this part.
Fine.
Aditi, you can continue.
I'll go to Arunava.
Yeah.
Arunava, you've commissioned one of the most read, comprehensive, exhaustive, inclusive list on Scroll about reactions of Indian publishing industry in Indian language scenario towards the pandemic, and phenomenal response to the entire series. I do understand that the overall webinar and digital scenario is very different from what we had earlier. The book launches, the book discussions, the overall festival scenario, the overall distribution of books. How has things changed for you as an editor, as a translator? And please talk about this whole scroll list that you've curated, because it has really opened up Indian publishing industry as a cohort to the world, and it is such a celebrated list now.
So the scroll list, of course, shout out to Kanishka Gupta, who was instrumental in curating the pieces. No, we started the series to examine the impact of the pandemic on publishing, on just the main players, the publishers, booksellers, distributors. But very soon, obviously, we realized that the whole story of books is not limited to just these players alone. Everybody from smaller bookstores to book clubs to writers to any kind of communities that centers itself around books, reading, writing, everyone is involved. And somewhere down the line, the pandemic became a lens through which to look at the history and the current situation of publishing in India as a whole. So it wasn't just about the mechanical impact of the publishing. And I think when we look back on the series and some of the pieces particularly, we'll get a very fascinating history of publishing in India.
Right.
Captured at a momentous, pivotal time. And I think in future, we will see just how pivotal this time has been. Because I suspect that not everybody has yet come to terms entirely with the kind of changes it has forced them into. You know, when you're in the middle of change, you're just reacting and you're doing things on the fly. But when a year later you look back, you see, oh my God, is that how far we've come? Is that how much our business has changed, the way we do things has changed?
Right.
So yes, as far as digital, the pivot, as it were, to digital is concerned, I think initially there was much excitement, as we know, at the possibility of suddenly going out and reaching out to readers without having to stage complicated events or having them to travel. And also the fact that you could bring in participants from all around the country and the world, which was a great thing, of course. But spare a thought for the poor reader. I mean, they were expected to jump from webinar to webinar to book launch to Instagram lives. When were they going to read? And I think the fatigue set in very quickly. And, it was tragic that there was a festival which had two of the world's leading translators, one of whom has translated a Nobel Prize winner. They did a live session which had 7 people watching. And while I'm sure that the video afterwards would have been watched by a whole bunch of other people, it's still, it's very sad in a way that such enormous opportunities are available, but because as usual in India, we do too much of everything. So we end up with more supply than there is demand, which is true of books also, I believe, many publishers would say. But what I'm most interested in personally is and this is something that Kanan and Ravi will particularly be able to tell us, is the end of the physical book fair. Not the consumer book fair, but the rights book fairs like Frankfurt and London and Paris. The fact that they were not held physically meant that those activities moved online and they stretched over a much longer period of time. And I think in a sense, this may be a golden period for Indian literature to find publishers abroad. Because now you have, publishers abroad, maybe they have more time to spare. They're not limited by their packed calendars during the book fairs. You can talk to them. And I believe that there have been results. Kanan and Ravi can bear me out. I understand that more books or rights or have been sold abroad than before. So maybe this we will actually be able to turn this digital opportunity into a big thing for the trade.
Right. I think I'll take it to Kannan ji first, and then I'll take it to Ravi ji from there.
Yeah. So, you want me to tell about follow from Aruna?
Rights, yes. The copyrights. Yes.
Yeah. So for me, I didn't do many meetings online with the foreign publishers, but what I did was I had time to focus on rights sale. So I took it the way I usually do, through my emails, and I did buy some good rights and I did sell some rights. Also, apply for grants and do all that in this time. Stuff normally, that gets postponed because you don't have time to look into them. So I could look at my entire list of things I needed to do in those areas. So what I decided was that I would, though I had minimum presence in the Frankfurt Book Fair, I didn't take any meetings. I thought I will let it go this year and then look at all the pending work and probably be ready for the next year. I am very strong believer that events like Frankfurt Book Fair are still very relevant, and those face-to-face meetings are very important. And what happens in Frankfurt, from my point of view, is not limited to rights, buying and selling and all those events. It's also the energy you get when you go there. The energy by meeting your fellow publishers, the ideas you exchange even outside the book fair, especially after book fair events and dinners. So all that is very important. It is those unplanned events where sometimes you pick up the very important kids, meet some very good people. And so I don't believe that a Frankfurt Book Fair can be completely replaced by a digital event. I think those events are very important. I'll be very happy to go if I can go this year again. And that feeling of meeting people, the physical presence, getting to know them, exchanging ideas with them. I think that casualness, that serendipity of unexpected events, all that is very, very important for me. So for this period, yes, and maybe after a Frankfurt personal meeting, you can further connect on Zoom and follow up and all that, do like emails, Zoom meetings, all that is possible. But I think, maybe because I'm of a certain age, for me, those things are also very important. And Zoom comes only after the personal events.
Okay. So from B2C to B2B, Raviji, what has been because you've been a regular like Kananji towards Frankfurt, London Book Fair. So this whole face-to-face meeting vis-a-vis the Zoom meetings and organizing the rights, translation rights on emails, how has the things changed so far?
Like Arunava said, we have been more into online buying and selling rights as well. I mean, I think we had more time to probably discuss and take some of the books to foreign publishers. I mean, Europe or US for that matter, and we were able to sell a few. I mean, otherwise, the book fairs may not have had enough time to do that. So, I mean, we could take it, as a continual process actually. So, in a way, it's a plus point actually. We could sell more books and we could buy some of good books actually. I mean, one of the books series we bought actually during the thing is, though we were doing Agatha Christie actually, the 100th year of Agatha Christie, we were able to do an entire set. I would have done this otherwise actually, because we could find readers as well as we could buy rights in a normal course. They wouldn't sell for a series like a complete set or something. So all this could happen because of the pandemic, and probably the models have changed in terms of how they sell the rights and how we could sell the rights as well. And just to add to what Giriraj said earlier, during the pandemic, actually, on the audiobook front, actually, in a short period, we got about 17 lakhs of royalty. I mean, probably he'll be able to add that to it, Giriraj. 17 lakhs of royalty from the audiobook sales alone. So I think this audiobook is one area which has grown tremendously, actually. And Malayalam has stable, same numbers has been there, actually, for the last few months.
That's very encouraging.
Yeah, but 20% leave and another 20% add to the thing. So it's a good thing with that. And book fair part physical for the B2C, we have already conducted a book fair, which is quite okay. I mean, people started coming in the protocols, So we had book fairs also happening in Kerala. The government did allow for the book fairs. And on the publishing part, has been, since the topic is on the digital publishing, we were doing about 7 books from May. We were doing about 7 books a week, actually, in e-format, and 4 books a week in print format as well. It is independent of what is actually. So, maybe as I said, maybe the revenue was low, actually, but we thought, to keep us alive, actually, that was one of the things. But ebooks did sell pretty well, actually, though the prices were low. Just to add to the whole thing, Giriraj wants to say something about the storytell part, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing. Malayalam, 85% of our catalog is DC. So the kind of money you got, that is pretty understandable.
No, what we are saying is actually the revenue-wise, actually, that did make sense for us, actually.
Royalty comes. Data there, but yeah.
It gets filtered from Storytel Sweden to Storytel India takes 50%, then they give 50%, then it goes to. So I mean, ultimately the money probably Storytel has made is actually decent in terms of the listeners. Actually, that's what I said.
Right.
In a good note, actually, that was.
Right, right. So from Malayalam, we'll go to Bangla, and then I'll come to Priya for giving me insight into how audiobooks and ebooks have worked out in your part of the world. Isha, how has the audio boom, the ebook boom been in the Bangla publishing industry? Or for that matter, you've done a lot of graphic novels of late. So how are things on that part of the on that front?
So it's a bit different in Bangla, you know. I mean, in Bangla, Kindle doesn't support the Bangla font. So ebook is not that, yeah, it's not that. It's 4 or 5 languages, and Bangla is not one of them. I'm not going to go into why it is, but it is not part of the Kindle yet. So, and audio also, I mean, we entered Storytel, I think much later than possibly Malayalam. I mean, it was just 2019 end that we had connected with Storytel, all the major publishers actually, and we started, you know, giving the books and the recordings to be done. And it's basically Storytel buying rights and not us sharing costs with Storytel yet. So therefore, both audio and ebook wasn't really an option for us, to be honest. Like from 23rd March to 23rd April, till the lockdown, complete lockdown was levied. From 23rd April onwards, the state government allowed delivery of physical books, door-to-door delivery, maintaining certain standards of sanitization. So that entire 1 month, there was, of course, ebook sales. There are locals. There's a local app called Swift Books, which does exclusive Bangla ebooks only with us. That obviously did get a boost, but it wasn't as much to kind of consider it. Yeah, there was no scale as such. There was a rise, of course, but it was not. I mean, if you look at the bigger picture, and for audio, yes, I heard that, you know, even on Storytel there wasn't enough books that we could, you know, I mean, kind of consider that there's a lot of sales have happened. Nothing as such. What we basically did was that on social media, when we were not being able to sell books,
right,
we stopped promoting our books because there was no point. If the reader doesn't buy the book, it makes no sense that we promote our books. What we did was we were asking authors, the popular authors, to read out one story from their collection, anthology collection, the ones who write short stories. Mostly everybody writes short stories. So whatever books we had, we asked them to read out for free. So it was not really a session where there was an interaction of one author only speaking to the readers and readers getting a 5 minutes option to question them. It was more like a story reading. So it was more about popularity and brand recall. We did something very unique also during this time. We organized 16 popular authors to write one chapter each of a horror thriller. It's called The Pani Jhora Cottage. It started, I mean, one author started, it moved on to the other author, and it was an impromptu. So they were just making up the stories, and it was one every week. So that got us a lot of popularity because it got a lot of shares. And we recently come out with that book also. It's a huge hit because there was already a certain following on social media. So these were the two things. The other thing that we did was that before the lockdown had started, we are not very, I mean, Amazon and Flipkart are not very popular in this part of India. I mean, Amazon even doesn't, I don't know how many publishers actually use Amazon's inventory. So we don't really allow Amazon to use, to give certain amount of discounts to have that kind of authority it has over the English language publication, because we didn't want Amazon to kind of monopolize the market. We have promoted a lot of regional Bangla e-commerce platforms which only focus on Bangla ebooks and deliver to parts in districts where Amazon can't deliver. So we used to partner with them before the lockdown started. They were handy when the lockdown was levied, and you know, of course when they allowed a certain amount of physical books to be delivered, they helped us a lot. They promoted us a lot because we used to do a lot of, yeah, so it was actually vocal for local.
Yeah.
We promoted them when things were fine. We could just do things on Amazon. We didn't. We used to do all the pre-orders with them. So there were 3-4 of them. Boy Choi, Read Bengali Books. They are very big, very well run, and they did a great job for us. And I would just say one more thing. What we did was that initially, as a bigger publishing house, we really don't care. I mean, we do care about the number of titles that are coming out, but we don't look at a per title sale. We come out with 24, 30 titles a month, and we look at the overall sale of the titles. But during the lockdown, we realized that if we come out with 24 to 30 titles, we won't be able to promote them. There'll be no visibility as such, how much ever we try. So we kind of reduced it to 4 titles a month initially, then it was 7. I think then it was 10. Now we are back to almost the normal number of titles. But I mean, I'm just saying that we were looking at per title sales at that point of time, just the bestsellers. We know that there's a certain relevance. This title will sell off a lot. That's how we kind of manage the finances so that we don't invest too much because we are not getting back a lot. There's no place to sell as such.
Right.
So yeah, broadly, these were the things.
Okay. Okay. Arunava, we're talking about now that the budget is round the corner, and of course, publishing industry has been paying GST since the time it's been levied, and we've seen how paper prices have been going up, down, and some focus of the budget has never been on the books. There has been a certain, I would very carefully use the word illiteracy about the way GST has been levied on the publishing industry in India. Your wish list from the budget that's around the corner for the publishing scenario.
Well, the budget, I don't have a wish list. I don't expect the budget to have done anything. I wasn't expecting the budget to have done anything for publishing. As you said, it's a very small space in the overall mind map of our policymakers. I'll turn this around a little bit in a different direction, given that we're seeing the rising costs of printing and distribution. And I believe the distribution part of the network is in deep trouble because online sales have increased from about 50% of overall sales to close on 75 and 80% during the pandemic. And there's a good chance that much of it may stay there. This will probably be more true for English books than for the other languages, because other languages have robust local selling networks, which English books don't. But even so, a lot of selling will happen online, whether it is on the biggies, Amazon, Flipkart, or on the smaller platforms that Esha mentioned. So with distribution also being in trouble, bookshops closing down, and we can see that ebooks and audiobooks are rising in their volume. And there's a third or whatever, a fourth vehicle for fiction, which is OTT platforms who are buying up rights because they scriptwriters can't work fast enough. So the producers are turning to published literature to look for material that they can turn into shows and films. Given all this, maybe publishers can start rejigging their financial strategies to not depend only on physical book sales, or to make physical book sales the single most important aspect of their overall business plans. I think if they started looking at audiobooks and ebooks and film sale rights as significant components of their sales and started using their resources to promote these, so far it's largely been a case of, okay, we have this, if anyone wants to come and take them, take them. Most big publishers don't even have dedicated personnel for pushing, for marketing their books for audio platforms or ebooks and so on. So I think if that happened, publishers would be in a better place. And I just need to make a point for writers here, which is that, the publishing business still is a business. Publishing professionals still make their living off publishing. Writers don't, they can't. We have now created a publishing business in India and elsewhere in the world where writers cannot make a living off publishing their books except for a handful. So how then is publishing going to get great books? How are writers going to give everything to their books in order to produce super material for publishers? So maybe somewhere, if publishers start bringing in these additional platforms in a serious way, and they actually are more profitable because there are no production costs involved, and you can leverage the intellectual property that you have in multiple ways. Your only cost literally is the person who is doing the marketing, right? So maybe all of this can actually lift publishing, writing, and everything and take us into a new space. I'm very hopeful that that this disruption will have created opportunities that we can seize permanently, or at least for some time to come.
So the creative disruption is the word. Coming to you, Priya. So we were discussing about the B2B format of business, and we were just discussing how the pandemic did not open all the gates for everybody, because as Isha was discussing, that there were certain glitches, there were certain technological handicaps that could not have been overcome in that period of time. Now we are talking about the creative destruction that is the need of the hour. Your take on these points? You're on mute. Right.
Speaking of disruptions, I've had many this morning. I'm sorry about that. I just wanted to go back to the last part of what Arunava said, that we're talking about audiobooks, ebooks. I think at the core of it is we want people to read more irrespective of the format that they're reading in. Many times we get questions as publishers saying, oh, but what happens now if ebooks take over? If take over what, first of all? I mean, it's still our books, our authors that are being read in another platform, on another platform. So if this year has taught us one thing, it's that you have to ensure that your books and authors are available in as many multiple formats as possible. So that when you're in a situation where physical books are no longer possible, I mean, God forbid that happens again, that ebooks are available, audiobooks are available, and people are reading irrespective of what format that they're reading on. As far as, I'm sorry, the question was creative disruption.
Yes, the creative disruption and the handicaps, the technological handicaps that did not offer 100% solution for publishing on the digital platforms.
Right. I think that, being in India, at least, that all of these have come together in this 1 year. Maybe it was it was a necessity as opposed to the luxury of time and really having a whole strategy that we rolled out with a lot of thought and so on. But I think the one thing that has changed everything is the smartphone, right? I mean, no longer are you relying on a device or a separate device where you have to buy that and you expect people to pay a certain amount of money and then they can read. This has changed the game. So as far as disruptions, yes, there are things that need to be ironed out. But I think everyone's efforts are going towards that way, so that more and more there's diversity in what you're reading, there's a variety in what you're reading, how you're reading, in which language you're reading. After all, people like Storytel coming into India shows that as well, that there is a huge market here for stories to be told in all languages. And for me, as another thing that sounds exciting especially with the audiobook industry, is the fact that you may not be able to read in that language, but you can definitely listen to those stories. It's another way of keeping literature alive in particular languages as well, in the sense that, opening up the audience for that. So I think there's lots of opportunities, there's lots of challenges, but all of us have had to sort of force ourselves to become better equipped at dealing with it as well. So if something good can come out of this year, I'm hoping that that's one of the things as well.
Right. So we'll go to Giriraj from here. Can something good come out of this year? Is it that what we are looking out for? Finally,
it can, basically, because one thing that I do see happening is at some point of time, the print publishers will start producing themselves the audiobooks, and that is bound to happen at some point of time, because the kind of revenue shares that we have right now and all, it will be much more beneficial for the print publishers to go for this on their own, basically. And internationally, we see that happening, and it will come to India at some point of time. And smart people are going to be quicker to jump onto that. That is one part. But I would also like to pick what Arunava was trying to say. We need to change this whole ecosystem in such a manner that writers should be able to do that. More and more writers should be able to live, just by writing. And that is a bigger challenge, because right now we have part-time writers most of the time. And with part-time writers, it becomes very, very difficult to get the kind of stuff that you need at the speed that you need. Because we must have produced 7,000 hours of content last year, despite the pandemic. And we are aiming to do more this year. And we were in 5 languages a year ago, and now we are into 10 languages. So the speed at which you need quality material, that is not coming our way. So we have to acquire a lot in every language. It would be, much greater, much profitable for everybody if there were more people producing audiobooks and if there were more writers who could live only by writing.
So from a ever enlarging readership base in various digital formats to the constraints in which the publishing is operating, I would now like to go on a closing remark session where I'd really like to ask each one of you about number one, is the government doing enough to support the publishing industries of India? Number two, are we talking about the intellectual capital of the country, which is not a part of any big planning system right now? And how can this gap be filled up? I think we've done enough representations, but is there any way to fill this gap? We'll start with Kananji and then we'll proceed from there.
So yes, no, I don't think that the government has done much for us. At least Tamil Nadu government has not done very little. What they have done is that they have asked us to submit books for the state libraries last month. But given all the corruption that is involved in the process, I'm not sure it's going to help all the publishers in any way or in a big way. And another thing is that, like I'd already mentioned somewhere else, that whenever Tamil Nadu government issues their policy about which bookshop, which industry is supported, which is open, which is closed, the number of hours, the publishing industry and the bookshop were never mentioned in any of those, instructions from the government. So it goes to show how much importance they are giving to the process. I think Kerala is exception here. Like Ravi has mentioned that, that the government was involved with publishers in creating some policy and helping them do some stuff. But that didn't happen probably in most part of India. It definitely did not happen in Tamil Nadu. So I don't have much expectations there because I'm not confident that this is going to change anytime soon in the process. So my focus has always been on how we can take care of ourselves through all the process. So I don't depend on library orders. I don't depend on any kind of government support, either from central government or state government. If it comes my way, I'm happy. But it is better not to expect and direct your energy too much in that direction, because at some point I had worked with these agencies trying to change their policy, influence their ideas, but finally it doesn't happen. Okay. So now I'm not very focused in that area. Probably the next generation of publishers who come in, with all the energy and ideas, they can try that. That's not where I am focused right now. I am focused on strengthening the publishing house in a way that we can sustain ourselves. But in this point, I want to mention that through this difficult period, a group of Indian publishers got together and formed a platform called Publishers Collective, where many of us are also there. That was really helpful for me. It's the first time I could connect with other publishers, exchange ideas,
Publishers,
so get some ideas from their own, from Indian language publishers. And that really helped me to bring out, think new ways, bring in revenue. And that really guided me through this difficult time. So that I have to mention. That was very helpful. Not the government, it is publishers getting together and exchanging ideas. That helped me through the very difficult period.
Thank you. Thank you. Arunava, coming to you for a quick response on the closing remark.
No, I look, I have never had any expectations of any Indian government. I don't think publishing falls in any category for them, neither a business nor an intellectual activity. So they, and ideally, I think increasingly authoritarian governments around the world would prefer there not to be too much of intellectual thinking going on in their countries. So globally too, I'm very pessimistic. But having said that, I'm no fan of the British government, but let me just tell you something that they did a couple of years ago. They launched a survey to find out why author payments were dropping. And the reason for that was that they felt that if authors could not earn enough from their books, then the pool of writers would shrink in the UK and diversity would be lost. And if the pool of writers shrank, then UK's place as a global purveyor of literature would also be diminished. So that is the kind of thinking that there was, that they wanted UK's global position as an origin of world-class literature should be maintained and should grow. Where is that kind of thinking? I don't think it figures anywhere. So it's, as Kannan said, it's up to us. It's up to the fraternity, up to the industry to do these things on our own. I'm very hopeful, however, that moving away from government, that if publishers in different languages get together, maybe, selling of rights and publishing each one another's books in their own languages in translation can go a long way towards increasing supply of good books and perhaps of reading as well. Because these writers already have a market, right? They already have a reputation.
Right. Great. Isha, coming to you for a quick closing remark.
No, the government doesn't do much here in the state of West Bengal, and I don't think the central does either. There are funds that are supposedly there for book buying, library purchases. There are 2,600 libraries across West Bengal, but there isn't much that happens because of corruption, and because of the lockdown, that funds also didn't get released. So there isn't much that I can speak about from the government's end. And Aditi, just say okay, because I think I don't know my internet is faltering or not.
You're completely up there. Yeah.
Okay. And as a closing remark, I don't know if I'll get an opportunity to speak again. Like what Arunava said about selling rights to other platforms, OTT and everything, to make that as a business. Just to add to that, I mean, it's more of an agenting job. I mean, it's very difficult to run a publishing house and to make sure that there are more adaptations happening from our books, because there's an entire editorial and printing press that we need to manage, which can't be managed if we are focusing just on sale of rights. So book sale in general is important, because that's where the entire revenue stands. And I'd say that looking at it from this point of time, when now the government is allowing small scale fairs and district fairs, which are government fairs, are happening, not the private ones, but the government fairs were happening, we realize that the future is going to be hybrid. There will always be a good mix of online and offline. There will be some people present online, and there will be a good number of people present offline as well. So yeah, that would be my closing remark.
All right, thanks. Coming to you, Priya.
Your question was about the government as well. I mean, I echo everything that's been said before. This industry has to be self-sufficient. We have to be self-sufficient. There's no expectation of outside support. I mean, we're just going down to a very small example of the issue of ISBNs recently, and how difficult it has been to even get that, even if you're lobbying the ISBN office and sending somebody there through the pandemic, it hasn't really helped much. It just goes to show how much importance is actually given to the industry. As you said that, there was a collective of Indian publishers that came together. I have to say that some of the best advice, suggestions have come from within the, publishing industry. And unfortunately, we don't have enough robust platforms for us to be talking to each other. It all comes down to individual relationships that you may have. We do have a women in publishing group, which I think you're part of as well, Aditi, and that's wonderful to sort of keep in touch and to know what's going on, and sometimes for recruiting, and when we did face this ISBN problem, to see what other people were doing. But I do wish that there was a more formalized, active, dynamic organization, because I think in such times, at least, it shows that we have to come together with solutions that could work for everybody, or should be able to work for each other. As a closing remark, I would say that, for us, it's been challenging to say the least, but, we were just talking about book fairs and so on as well. As you know, half our list comes from illustrated books. Now, first of all, there is no transition to audio and ebooks. They are more expensive than regular books. Our right sales are done in person at book fairs, because we need to see, we spend a lot of resources in the dummies that we create. They're almost as good as the actual end product. And those dummies are only shown at these meetings, which we rely on these book fairs for. No amount of PDFs and, emails are going to replace that. So in that way, we had to, put a hold to that kind of publishing, to those books, and shift them to this year and the following year. So there has been, one thing is that in our size of company, you have to be able to pivot, you have to be flexible, and our size allows us to do that. So I'm hoping that, once this year, as Arunava, I think, said that, right now we don't, while you're going through the chain, sometimes you don't have the luxury of being able to understand the extent of it. It's only going to be in the coming months, in the coming years. But I'm optimistic that, if we are able to pivot and find other ways for our readers to find our books and to keep reading, we're okay. We're doing what we're doing, what we were meant to do.
Great, great. Raviji, closing remarks from you. Of course, we've heard a lot about the Kerala government initiatives during the publishers exchange programs, but the way forward this year.
The thing is, actually, government has done a fairly decent job. Actually, we were allowed to open the bookshops twice a week from April itself, so that there is something which is pretty new to the whole industry across India and elsewhere, And very recently, December and January, they had about 14. We have 14 districts in Kerala, and we had one book fair each and every district by the government for the Library Council. So they also triggered about 20 crores of funds being pumped into save the publishers as well as the libraries during this period. So we can't really complain with regards to what government has done to make the smaller publishers and independent publishers like us pretty live, From the central government part, I wish, we had something like the 2 billion euro fund which German government has given. I don't think that could happen in India. Anyway, on the GST part, I just have an interesting argument. The tax, actually, the zero tax on books happened in 1950s. My father was instrumental in abolishing tax in Kerala. Actually, that was what Nehru took to across India for not having tax. But with the GST, this is actually it's a reverse thing now. Actually, we all pay all the GST and we don't get any input output credits. Actually, they will add at least 5% tax for the books, so we can at least take the credit for the royalties and other things which happens. Right. For us, it's a huge money flow out actually of money because if we can't take the credits
Right. Thank you.
We shall overcome.
Yeah. Girirajji, closing remarks from you, and then we close the session.
So, as far as the government is concerned, as a multinational business, we have our own set of problems, but we are kind of navigating through them. With audiobooks, the 18% GST has always been there from day one. So we have made our case and we have told the government to reduce it and at least bring it at par with ebooks, which is 5%. And that hasn't happened. So I was, there with the Swedish Commerce Chambers and we made a presentation and all, but it hasn't happened so far. But this is a very interesting territory basically. Authoritarian regimes can promote books sometimes, like the great USSR. We had this truckload of books from Russia all the time. So I haven't really given up my hope on governments, and we should keep pushing our case and see if we can get something out of them. That's one thing. And as far as closing remark is concerned, I think we need to understand that in a long run, both print and digital are going to stay together. They are not there to eat up each other's place. Sure. They are not there to eat into each other's business, basically. And we have already seen in countries like Sweden, where the industry is like 50% print and 50% audio, but it's not as if that they have eaten into each other's space, basically, because readers and listeners don't always overlap.
Right.
The different people who read and listen. Right. I've been trying to become a listener. I haven't become so far.
Brilliant. So thank you everyone for your time this morning, and on behalf of Jaipur Bookmark, for your unconditional support all through these years, even in these adverse situations. Thank you so much for all the support, and we wish to meet you, see you very soon at the Jaipur Bookmark when the situations are slightly normal and we are back into the festival season from next year onwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Arunava, Isha, Giriraj, Kanan, Priya, and Ravi for this exciting and intriguing session. Thank you, Aditi, for being fabulous as always, and of course, for curating this insightful session. A big thank you to all for being such a wonderful and attentive audience. All our sessions will be available to view later on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Once again, we would like to thank all our advisors and partners for generously supporting the Jaipur Bookmark.
The Jaipur Bookmark reflects the core values of the publishing industry, and it brings together some of the greatest publishing professionals from around the world.
जयपुर बुकमार्क एक ऐसा प्लेटफॉर्म है जहाँ पे कि बिजनेस को समझने का एक अपॉर्चुनिटी मिलता है. सो आई थिंक JBM इज समथिंग विच इज़ फैंटास्टिक एंड पीपल हु डोंट नो अबाउट इट, उनको आना चाहिए, उनको इसका हिस्सा बनना चाहिए.
Jaipur Bookmark. Come and celebrate literature, meet authors, agents, publishers. Join us at the Jaipur Bookmark.